Welcome to the Week 11 Fantasy Flex Props podcast presented by Prize Picks. I am your host, Chris Raybon, joined as always by my dude, Sean Kerner. Sean, what's going on?
What's up? Happy AJ Dillon week. It's finally AJ Dillon week, so I'm very happy right now. Christmas comes early to my dynasty team this week. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It is AJ Dillon week. I don't think we've had this. We haven't had this since, because Jones actually managed to play all the games last year, and
no, it was Jamal Williams.
That's
was the
what
lead
it
back
was.
Jones missed 2 games. I was all excited, and it was Jamal Williams. You called that before the season started, but finally,
that's right. Yeah.
This is for me and Friedman. Yeah,
yeah, you guys are
AJ Dillon revenge week. Yes.
Oh, hey, only a year late. It's not too bad. All right. So we will, as usual, we'll do our top 10 props. Before we get into that, we will break down the Sunday Night Football showdown slate. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers going to the Chargers home to take on the Chargers. This is a classic Steelers ugly Mike Tomlin underdog spot. So, keep that in mind. I think Tomlin's something like over 70% as an underdog against the spread from week 3 on, and he's won like 60% of the games outright. So just because you see the line and it's Chargers, I think -5.5, doesn't necessarily mean the game's going to go according to plan. So with that in mind, Sean, who do you like in the captain spot for this Steelers Chargers matchup?
So on the Steelers side, it's kind of murky right now. We don't know if Big Ben is going to be able to play. He's still on the COVID list. And then Chase Claypool, he might come back from his injury. He might not. So either way, I'm going Najee Harris here. The Chargers ranked dead last in DVOA against the run, and we know Najee will get his touches. So I think he'll be efficient here as well. So he's kind of a no-brainer on the Steelers side, in my opinion. And then Chargers side, I'm gonna have to go with my boy Mike Williams. Like he's bound to break out of this slump at some point. He still gets a ton of high value targets. Only 7 other pass catchers have seen 7 or more end zone targets and 14 or more targets downfield. So I think Mike Williams will get his. I think just lately Josh Herbert has only had eyes for Keenan Allen. I understand that he's open on nearly every play, but the Chargers are going to have to get Mike Williams involved. And I think this is a spot. He could have a big game. So I'll have a lot of Mike Williams in the captain slot because I think he does have the higher ceiling than Keenan Allen.
Is Josh Herbert the mix of Bills quarterback?
Oh God, did I say Josh Herbert?
or are you just on your Scott Hansen shit and you're just still thinking about Josh Allen sacking Josh Allen and forcing a fumble recovery on Josh Allen and intercepting Josh Allen?
No, that's probably Josh Kelly. I was looking at the depth chart. Yeah. I probably said it's we're getting that point in the season where I'm gonna trip a circuit here and there. But Josh Herbert is not playing in this game, Justin Herbert. But either way, forget what I said there. I still like Mike Williams.
Funnest thing about this Charger team is that they might have a receiver named Maurice French active, and he has 2 F's in his name. So it's not
former Chiefs player, right?
Right. It's not FRENCH. It's FFRENCH, which is probably the weirdest spelling of something I've ever seen in my life. But I agree with Najee. I think that's the guy for me. I try not to get too cute on these showdown slates. I usually, because you have so many of them throughout the course of the year that I try to take a stand and plant a flag in the captain spot. I'm not, mixing up exposure too much. Which when it hits, it hits. When it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think Najee is the clear choice. If I had to pick a Charger, I'd still go Keenan Allen, just because he's been so consistent, and I think he has, against this Pittsburgh defense, it is a little bit banged up. I think they could kind of dink and dunk it down the field. So I'm still looking for that Mike Williams breakout. I do like the call, but I mean, I don't know. I think they're saying there's nothing wrong with his knee and it's not the issue, but it's got to be because he started so hot and just kind of tailed off precipitously down the stretch. All right, who do we like for our DFS cheat codes?
So on the Charger side, Josh Palmer is the guy I said before the season started that it's only a matter of time before he passes up Jalen Guyton as the number 3 receiver in this offense. And it's admittedly taken longer than I expected, but it seems to be coming. The past 2 games, Guyton's averaged about 45% routes run, Palmer's been closer to 35%. So I think this could be the game where Palmer actually ends up playing more than Guyton. Palmer's a third round pick. He's out of Tennessee. Some people compared him like a Terry McLaurin, Michael Gallup. He has some talent, and being the number 3 receiver in this offense comes with some value. So I think just this is the time, this is the slate to kind of load up on Palmer before his potential breakout. So I'll have quite a bit of shares of Palmer here. And then on the Steelers side, again, we don't know if Big Ben's playing or if Chase Claypool's playing, but I'm going to stick with James Washington here. He's a good deep threat, and he's the kind of player that can break the slate on a single reception. And he kind of did that the other week against the Bears. So I'm going to stick with James Washington on the Steelers side.
Yeah, I like the call for Palmer. That's the guy I was looking at. He's closed the gap on Guyton. Brandon Staley made a comment about the lack of production from that number 3 receiver spot as something that's been kind of slowing down this Charger offense. So I do like Palmer. I think that, they're still trying to find these deep shots and they're not getting them. So Guyton's becoming less valuable because it seems like league wide, everyone's playing the same defense that Brandon Staley loves to play on the other side, which is 2 deep safeties, take away the deep shots and let teams have to drive up and down the field. So I think that, suits a guy like Palmer, bigger target a little better than a guy like Guyton who, he's out there just running wind sprints essentially, or maybe he'll get like a handoff here and there, but it hasn't been pretty. So Josh Palmer is definitely the guy for me. Like you said, we don't know what's going on the Steelers side yet. But we are in a showdown slate, and the Chargers do like to play their tight end. So you also got to keep like Steven Anderson and
Steven
Parham.
Yes.
Yeah, Anderson plays fullback now a lot, because Gabe Neighbors, for whatever reason, I don't know, is he hurt or is he just being scratched?
He was hurt. Yeah,
okay.
I think he was hurt. It's a mixture of both, but yeah, I noticed that in Trey McKitty, the rookie, outsnapped Steven Anderson in terms of a pass catching tight end. But our boy Donald Parham, former XFL legend, I mean, if he's not the touchdown vulture of this slate, I don't know who is.
Yeah, if he's gonna either, he's got 2 true outcomes. It's like touchdown or penalty, or a penalty that calls back someone else's touchdown. Like that,
right.
That's all Donald Parham does on the field. But yeah, I think one of those 3 guys is what I'm trying to say. Like they were pretty close in routes run last game. I mean, Parham had 24% per drop back, McKitty 16, Anderson 11. It's kind of been flip flopping, throughout the last few weeks. So I think all of them are kind of they're dart throws, right? But could fill out that last spot in your lineup. All right. Let's get into our props for week 11. What we like to do on this show is we look at the prize picks line. We just take a quarterback prop, 2 running back props, and 3 receiver props. So Sean, start us off. Where are you going for QB?
So I'm going with Joe Burrow over 255.5 passing yards against the Raiders. This line seems like 25 to 30 yards too low. This doesn't seem like a tough matchup. The Raiders ranked 22nd in DVOA against the pass. I've talked about this game being a potential shootout all week. I love stacking this game in DFS. So I'm going way over this. Burrow's gone over this total in 7 and 9 games. One of the times he went under, he didn't have T. Higgins. And that was, those 2 games were early in the season when the Bengals were a bit more run heavy. So I see no reason for this number to be this low. So I'm going way over this.
Let's see where I have it. I have Joe Burrow. Yeah, I have it. I have it about 15, 20 yards over as well. I do think that it's interesting because I do think the Raiders actually match up well with the Bengals in this spot. The Bengals average over 3 yards less versus zone coverage per attempt than man, and the Raiders obviously love to play zone. So maybe that's what they're taking into account. I don't know, but I've taken that into account, and I still have this number, in the 270s. So either way, there's value on this number here at 255.5. All right, for my quarterback prop, I'm going Justin Fields over 30.5 rushing yards. He's been over this in each of the past 4 games. And the reason is, and we've talked about this, he's just scrambling more. He scrambled 5 or more times in each of his last 4 starts. He wasn't scrambling at all almost in his first 4 starts. Usually saw him around 0 or 1, and now he's scrambling 5+ times per game here, and has cleared this number in each of his last 4. So I'm expecting him to go over this again. I have it in the low 40s, so I see quite a bit of value at this number at 30 and a half.
Yeah, like we said, like anything under 40 right now for Fields seems too low. So yeah, 30 and a half. I'm going over that as well.
All right, where are we going with our first running back prop?
So I'm going with David Montgomery over 49 and a half rushing yards. He was able to return from his knee injury just before their week 10 bye, and he looked really good. And I was surprised to see how much he dominated the rush attempts between he and Khalil Herbert. Montgomery had 13 carries to Herbert's 4. So it looks like Montgomery is going to return to more of a workhorse role. He should be even closer to 100% following their bye. So I love him to go over this. And he's gone over this number 4 out of 5 games this year. So it's not like this line is too high or anything, but yeah, I'm projecting him closer to 60, 60 to 65 yards here. I just think he has a much higher floor than I anticipated. Even heading into week 9, I thought it was going to be more of a split backfield, but I'm pretty confident that he'll go over this.
Yeah, this number is kind of interesting. It seems maybe, I know Williams could be back. Maybe the books are worried it's going to be like a 3-way thing. I don't think it's going to be much of a split at all. Baltimore is 15th in run defense DVOA, so they've been kind of mediocre. So yeah, we got 2 Bears rushing overs already.
Yeah, I think he probably does benefit, from Justin Fields breaking out as a runner too. And interestingly enough, like the only game he went under this year, under this number, was Justin Fields' debut, where he only threw for 68 yards and they barely moved the ball. So I think just Justin Fields playing much better is partly why I think, I love this prop.
Yeah, and it should be one of those low scoring, kind of ugly games. I mean, Lamar Jackson seems, they're giving him like somebody said he's like setting the record for like non-COVID illnesses. Like it seems like every practice he's just sent home with a non-COVID illness. Who knows what that means? But either way, this seems like one of those games where they're going to kind of keep it on the ground. All right, for my first running back prop, going to old reliable, fading backs against the Saints. Jordan Howard under 37 and a half rushing yards. I have this in the low 30s, so I still see quite a bit of value here. I think this already dropped from 42 and a half to 37 and a half. And even though Howard's been the lead back, when you kind of divvy up the carries the way they've been doing it over these last 3 weeks between Howard, who's again been the lead back, and Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, who's been more the backup. Gainwell hasn't really factored in too much. You still don't come out with this high of a number for Howard against the Saints defense. They're allowing just 2.9 yards per carry to opposing running backs, and they are number 1 in the league in run defense DVOA. So I know Howard's gone over this number, but it's kind of telling that the number is so low, even though Howard's been over this number in each of the last 3 games, which is why, and it's because of that Saints defense. So I don't think that they come out with that same kind of game plan here to just run the ball against this defense. No one's been able to do it. I mean, we saw Adrian Peterson and Foreman and all those guys try last week. Every week we see teams try to do it. Every week it seems like the books try to set these props low enough and they still go under. So going with old reliable Jordan Howard under 37 and a half rushing yards against the Saints.
Yeah, this is like the perfect storm where you get to sell high on Jordan Howard and, fade a running back against the Saints defense. But, there's been no denying that Howard's been great these past 3 games, but it's been just perfect game scripts for him. They had the 2 blowouts and then the 1 game against the worst run D in all of football in the Chargers. So love the Howard fade as well. I'm projecting this closer to like 33 and a half. And he has a lower floor than that.
Oh yeah, he's got one of those like 5-yard, 0-yard floors. All right, where are you going with your second running back prop?
I'm going with Myles Gaskin over 35 and a half rushing yards. Now, ever since Malcolm Brown went down in week 8, carries really haven't been the issue for Gaskin. He's seen 12 or more carries in the past 3 games. But efficiency has been an issue. He's only averaged 2.2 yards per carry. So he's only gone over this number once since Brown went down. But I think he's going to bounce back here and positively regress closer to like a 3.5 yards per carry. That'll be good enough here. But, the Jets rank 31st in DVOA against the run. Dolphins are a 3.5-point favorite. So it could be more of a run heavy game script than we're used to seeing from them. And Salvin Ahmed hasn't really mixed in as much as I thought he would. And Patrick Laird is really just the pass catching back. So I think most of the carries are going to go to Gaskin. So 35 and a half, that's not a real high bar to clear. So I think he goes over this pretty easily.
Yeah, I had this circled as well. I think this is a really good prop. 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 I think this is a really good prop listen, I know Gaskin's been inefficient, and he's actually been mind-numbingly inefficient. It's getting to that level of, remember Kalen Ballage a couple years ago when he
Yes.
averaged like negative 0.1 yards a carry or something like that. It seemed like, but again, this Jets defense is not very good, so I still have Gaskin, right around 4 yards per carry. Again, there's a lot of regression in that number, and I am projecting him for 13.8 carries. So yeah, I have this in the low 50s. So I see quite a bit of value on this. Again, not when you look at the game logs, you get a little queasy. But if you're just being realistic about how many carries he's going to get, I mean, he could bust like one decent run, not like a 15-20 yarder, and he probably gets over this number. So I like this one as well. All right, for my second running back prop, I'll go with a running back in this same game, Michael Carter, under 31.5 receiving yards. He's been under this number in 5 out of his 9 games, but this is really about the matchup and the circumstances that are now happening with this Jets offense. So you have Miami, who blitzes at the second highest rate in the league, 38%. And what that does is that usually forces quarterbacks to audible to keep the back end in protection, more than most teams. You're also getting a lot of man coverage when you blitz, and running backs are more often than not going to catch the majority of their passes against zone coverage, just underneath as a check down. Against man coverage, usually you take that shot down the field. So that's number one with the matchup. But then you have Joe Flacco starting for the exact reason that Miami is a pretty blitz heavy team. So you're going with Joe Flacco here. His average at the target last year was 11.3. Now, these last few games, it's been Mike White. His average at the target is 6.4. Before that, you had Josh Johnson. His was 7.7, and Zach Wilson's 9.1. So every quarterback that Carter has played with has had between a 2 and 5 yard difference in target depth compared to Flacco, who, again, likes to push it down the field. So he's not the type of guy that's going to just check down to his back. Never really has been that type of player. So I have this projected in the low 20s rather than the low 30s. Still have Carter getting about 3 catches, but running backs average about 7 yards, 7-8 yards per catch on average. So I have this one in the low 20s. It's 31.5. I'm going under for Carter for receiving yards at 31.5.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I have him 3 catches for 21 yards. So it sounds like we're in line there. And yeah, I think it was mostly Mike White just being a check down machine really fueled Michael Carter's breakout. I still like him in fantasy as an RB2, but he still splits time pretty evenly with Ty Johnson as a pass catching back. And last week, Tevin Coleman returned, and I think he ate into his pass usage just enough to lower this even more. So yeah, I love the under 30.5 as well.
Yeah, Carter's he's still getting the rushing workload,
yeah.
But the when it comes to being a receiver, it's kind of split up a little more. All right, where are we going with the first receiving prop?
So I got one more over for you, then I promise I will have an under. But I'm going over 32.5 receiving yards for Tyler Boyd against the Raiders. This partly has to do with me being 25 yards above the market for Joe Burrow's passing yard prop, but so it correlates well with that. But you mentioned it, Jamar Chase has been a little bit less productive against zone defense this year. The Raiders play zone at the 6th highest rate. So I think this could be a good spot for Boyd. And he's the kind of guy, he has a really high floor. So 32.5 yards isn't much for him to clear. And like I said, I think this is going to be a shootout. I don't think the Bengals are necessarily going to get into a run heavy game script. So I think, Boyd, I think a safer projection for him would be closer to be 43.5. So I'm over 10 yards over this market. So I think there's a ton of value and love stacking this with Burrow's prop as well.
Yeah, I have this in the low 40s as well. That seems like a very conservative line for Boyd. I know he's had a couple ugly games, but in this spot, you got to think that he should get, I think his reception prop is like 3.5. I think that's low as well. I have him closer to 4 catches. So I agree. I think you kind of pencil in 4 catches for 10 or 11 yards, and you get to, 40 to 45, yards for a median there. So I'm over this one as well. For my first receiving prop, I'm going with Tre'Quan Smith under 37.5 receiving yards. And this is another one of those matchup based props that he's been a little bit over this the last couple of games. But you look at the Eagles, every podcast we seem to mention that they played zone at one of the highest rates in the league, and we try to find a way to get an edge in the market, based on that. And look at Tre'Quan Smith, only 29.4% of his targets have come and get zone coverage this year. And to put that into perspective, most defenses are playing zone coverage at about a 2/3 clip. Like you're playing man about a third of the time. So the average wide receiver should still be in that, 50+% range against zone coverage, on average. So to go as low as 30%, you're entering like Brian Edwards territory here. And we've seen Edwards completely disappear against teams that go zone heavy and then like reappear again against teams that go man heavy. So I think you could see that this week with Tre'Quan Smith. He's not on the New Orleans turf. He's outdoors in Philly again. It's the second straight road game, I believe it is for the Saints. So I think you'll see kind of a disappearing act here. Nothing against Tre'Quan, but you can't really trust Saints receivers. I mean, you just gotta kind of take it. And we both like Deontay Harris here. So and whose line is around the same. So if I had to pick, it's unlikely that two Saints receivers are clearing 38 yards. And it's crazy as that sounds to say. And if I had to pick one, it'd be Deontay Harris or Callaway even. So going Tre'Quan under 37.5. I have this in the low 30s.
Yeah, I really love this prop, and I was probably a week early on it because I had the same bet last week, and he finished with 44.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, this is a bad matchup for him. I think that the three guys that are going to benefit the most from the Eagles zone coverage would be Alvin Kamara if he plays, Adam Troutman, and Deontay Harris. So yeah, I think Tre'Quan Smith he's much more likely to hit his floor this week, and that's what I thought was going to happen last week. So yeah, I love this prop. I'm projecting it similar to you, lower 30s as well.
Yeah, and we might even get this is when you might want to wait until closer to kickoff because you might even get a better number if Kamara is out. The books might even raise it up a couple of yards, even though I don't think it's warranted. Again, it hasn't been there against this type of scheme. Are
you projecting Trevor Siemian for closer to like 95% of dropbacks now?
Yeah, he's in that. He's still not as high as other quarterbacks. Like I think I still have Taysom for maybe 2 to 3 pass attempts. But yeah, it's been slowly creeping up. Even though I still don't think it's that secure. Like the thing is, Taysom is it looks like he might not play this week, so that kind of changes things, obviously. All right.
Yeah, but just I mean, going back to last week, you and I were probably both projecting for like 65, but he's played well enough, and yeah, Taysom Hill's banged up that it's raised my passing projections overall, but they're not going to Tre'Quan Smith is what I'm getting at.
All right, we're going for our final receiving prop for week 11.
So I'm going with Michael Pittman under 61.5 receiving yards. This is just a brutal matchup in general. The Bills defense has been shutting down receivers all season. They've only allowed 4 different receivers to clear 65 yards this year. So this is a tough matchup for Pittman. And his 76% catch rate is due for regression because based on his ADOT of around 11.5 yards, you'd typically expect a receiver to catch a ball, 63.5% of the time. Now, granted, I think Pittman is way above average at this point, but I'm expecting some regression for his catch rate, and it could happen this week. So either way, I'm projecting him closer to the mid 50s. I just think it's a tough spot for this Colts offense in general, and especially Pittman.
Yeah, I have him in the low 50s. My projections for Carson Wentz go way down against this Bills defense. I mean, even in games where regardless of what the Bills offense is doing, that defense has been pretty stout pretty much all year. They can man up on Pittman. They can use White. I mean, there's a lot of different things that they can do. So, Pittman is he's like kind of a mid-tier wide receiver 3 this week. And he's been in that, high-end wide receiver 2 range most of the year, but I have him as number 32 in terms of wide receivers for week 11. So yeah, I'm down on him as well. I'll close it out with your specialty. Take a stud elite pass catcher and take an under. I'm going Darren Waller under 64.5 receiving yards. Just to play on the number here, he's been under this in 5 out of 8 games. Cincinnati is allowing just 44.8 schedule adjusted receiving yards per game to the tight end position. That is 10th lowest. So, we haven't seen these monster games from Waller this year. That really hasn't changed to too much of an extent, whether, Ruggs has been in the lineup or not. I just think defenses are really kind of they're gearing up to stop Waller, and you're still getting the catches here. You're still getting 5-6 catches, but just not getting those big plays down the field for Waller. Those tend to be covered up. So 64.5 is a big number for him, given what we've seen out of him for this season.
Yeah, exactly. I like this one as well. He's only gone over this number 3 times, I believe, and one of them was 65 yards, so barely went over. So yeah, I'm about 8 yards below the market on this one. And yeah, if like a guy like Deshaun Jackson were to play a bit more here, catch a deep ball, and continue running the correct direction, a lot going against him here. And yeah, I think this matchup's going to be a shootout, but he definitely doesn't have an easy matchup. So I think it's going to be another Hunter Renfrow game, possibly Josh Jacobs. But yeah, I think Waller's shown that he has a low enough floor this year to kind of fade him in spots like this.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a shootout, and it's interesting because even if we do get a shootout, it might not all come with receiving yards. It might be a lot of penalties. Jerome Boger is going to be the ref for this game. In his career, the over is 118, 81-1, 59%. According to our Action Labs data, he's one of the most profitable over referees. So could see some penalties, which could help Waller stay under this number.
Yeah,
so.
Good point.
All right, that is going to do it for our props. To recap, Sean going Joe Burrow over 255.5 passing yards, David Montgomery over 49.5 rushing yards, Myles Gaskin over 35.5 rushing yards, Tyler Boyd over 32.5 receiving yards, and Michael Pittman under 61.5 receiving yards. I'm going Justin Fields over 30.5 rushing yards, Jordan Howard under 37.5 rushing yards, Michael Carter under 31.5 rushing yards, Tre'Quan Smith under 37.5 receiving yards, and Darren Waller under 64.5 receiving yards. That is going to do it for our Week 11 Props podcast. You can find Sean on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker, and you can find me on Twitter at Chris Raybon. You can find us at those same handles in the free award-winning Action Network app, where you can follow all of our bets, including our player prop bets, and track yours. You can find our fantasy football content, projections, and rankings at actionnetwork.com, and our DFS content tools and models at fantasylabs.com. Until next time, let's get this money.